Talk about this record deal that Boeing just signed here with the Qatar Airways. I mean, 200 wide-body aircraft. It's certainly a big news, given just the crisis that this company has been dealt with for the last couple of years. Is this going to be Boeing's big comeback, you think?
Partly a comeback. Now, keep in mind, President Trump dragged them across the line here because, remember, this is an airline that was very unhappy with Boeing. They canceled a 50 airplane order somewhere in the past and gave it all to Airbus because Boeing couldn't deliver 737s. So they weren't a real happy camper as the global customer of Boeing. So what the president just did is brought them back and also brought a tremendous economic impact to the USA over the next 30 years. So I think it's good news for everybody, very bluntly.
Tell us about the backlog, right? Because some have said, just given the amount of backlog, it's going to take years to kind of clear it. And you know, really the key issue is not just about getting orders, but really kind of filling them and ramping up production.
There's no question about that. And Boeing has to come to the party. Remember, as I just said, this is an airline that canceled an order for 50 airplanes not too long ago because Boeing couldn't deliver. Boeing has to come across the line. You know, they had the president come up to the line for them. They have to now produce. And keep in mind, their problems are not over. They still have, what did they deliver last month? Something like 40 airplanes. That's like, you know, 2/3 of what Airbus delivered. And Airbus has its own problems. So right now, the people at Boeing have better come across as of very quickly, or they're going to be in very deep trouble.
What can they do to increase input, you think, Mike?
Well, it's been, you know, as we've gone over 1,000 times the last year or so, Boeing was a very mismanaged company for years. It focused on stock price rather than putting out airplanes. And as a result, it became very, very sloppy. They're getting better by the moment, but they're going to have to get some limitations taken off on their production. They're still at 38 a month for 737s. It should be closer to 70. They have production problems at their Charleston, South Carolina production center where they put out 787s. Cleaning those things up in the near term being the next 12 months, is going to be critical. Watch that.
Can we at least say, Mike, that the bad news around this company is behind us in some ways, that maybe there is not quite a high bar now for things to actually improve? At least we ended the strike late last year. We're getting some news now of a potential thaw, according to our sources, between the U.S. and China, and maybe China is thinking about removing that ban on Boeing deliveries. Can we just say the worst is behind us for Boeing?
It is to a degree. Keep in mind the China thing. China cut Boeing out years ago. The airplanes that are being delivered, they've been sitting on the ground for 5 years. So Boeing has not gotten a big order from China for 4 or 5 years. China politically has cut Boeing out. Getting back in is going to be more an issue of what goes on in Beijing than what goes on in Seattle. And we'll see what happens there. But nevertheless, Boeing right now has more orders that they can put out productively over the next few years. That'll be the big thing, with or without China. So again, we have an entity with a huge backlog, and they've got to get up to be able to meet that backlog. The President of the United States and the U.S. government has come to the party for Boeing. They now have to produce.
How soon do you think jet deliveries can be restored in China then? And that these carriers in the mainland can actually get the planes they need?
Well, keep in mind, as far as China goes, these are airplanes that were ordered years ago. And delivering, there's like 50 left that have been sitting there literally for the last 4 or 5 years. China has not made an order for Boeing airplanes, not a major order in the last 6, 7 years. That's a political thing. So coming back into the China market has everything to do with the folks in Beijing and much less to do with with Boeing's ability to produce the airplanes.
The stock itself, though, has recovered from the losses since Liberation Day. I just got to wonder then, Mike, you know, the manufacturer seems to be quite exposed to what the president says. It's almost like a trade proxy in some ways. Do you think that's actually a good or bad thing?
Well, it's good or bad makes no difference. It's better than not having it, but keep in mind, Boeing, having been a very mismanaged company for years, they got a new management team in there. They've got production problems. They've got all kinds of other issues that they're working on. Cleaning those things up over the next 12 to 18 months is going to be critical to making this Qatar thing work, as well as the rest of their backlog that's out there, because there's only 2 players in the global game now, and it's Boeing and Airbus. Embraer is just not going to be able to be up to it. China has nothing really that can be sold. So Boeing has a market there that wants its airplanes. They better be able to produce them.
And you mentioned about the new leadership under Kelly Ortberg. I'm just wondering, what more would you like to see from this new CEO?
Well, keep in mind the things that were uncovered over the last few years with a very mismanaged company. Literally, mechanics at Boeing working on airplanes with no records, things like that. That, I think, is going to be fixed right now with better oversight. And the new CEO understands that. They got new people put into the production side of it to bring that up to snuff. So, I think they've got what they need to move ahead, but they've got to keep their eye on the ball and not go back to what they were before, worrying about whether the stock price was X or Y. They got to produce airplanes.